Hello, friends, and welcome to Staying in My Lane podcast, where we talk about uncomfortable topics, the hard truths, the things that we don't really want to acknowledge, or the things that we just don't really know how to talk about. So that's where I come in and I can bring that insight, bring my opinion, bring knowledge, bring research, bring facts, and we can have a conversation. We have talked about relationships, PTSD, divorce, infidelity, open relationships, why things work and they don't work. And today ties it all back into all of those things. Today's episode is about learning to let go, letting go of people, letting go of control, letting go of expectations, letting go of how we thought life was supposed to be. This is something that I've struggled with a lot, and I've never really opened up a lot about it. So whether you're sitting on your porch with a coffee, walking the dog, or stuck in traffic, thank you for letting me keep you company. Let's get started. Letting go is one of those phrases that we toss around. Just let it go, release it, move on. But when you're in the middle of something painful, confusing, or out of your control, those words can feel very hollow. So what does letting go really mean? It doesn't mean pretending you're okay when you're not. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened. And it definitely does not mean giving up or being passive. Letting go means loosening our grip on what we cannot change. I'm going to say that again. You guys know how I am. I repeat things that are important. Letting go means loosening our grip on what we cannot change and choosing to live from a place of peace instead of resistance. It's about acknowledging what's real and still choosing to move forward despite what's to come. If you've listened in the past, you know that I went through a divorce. And I went through a really hard time with my first marriage. And that was a major transition for me. A relationship that I had built my future around with my children ended. And for months, I carried an invisible box everywhere I went. A box that was filled with what ifs, regrets, and stories about how I had failed. And I clung on to that box like it was part of me. But over time, I started noticing something. The box was not changing anything. It wasn't helping me grow. It wasn't helping me release it. It was just making me feel very heavy and weighed down. And one day, after a quiet walk and honest cry, I decided to put it down. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started caring more about myself, about my peace, my growth, my future. And something strange happened. I felt a little bit lighter. And then day by day, I felt more free and more at peace. And what I've noticed is that people tend to talk a lot about learning to let go, but it's very hard to do it when it comes time to actually act on it. So how do we actually let go? Like practically let go? A few things that have helped me personally, and maybe they can help you, is name what you're holding. I've always talked about in this podcast, name the feeling, feel it, write it down, say it out loud, be honest with yourself. You can't release what you haven't fully acknowledged. The next thing, allow the grief, that grief that we've talked about, allow that grief to settle. Letting go always involves some form of loss. Grieve it. Don't skip that step. Don't push it down or suppress it. And remind yourself that this is yours to carry. You are not responsible for other people's decisions, actions, or healing. You are responsible for your own. Creating a new ritual. Sometimes we need a symbolic moment. Writing a letter, burning it, taking a walk without your old playlist, or simply stating out loud that I release this pain. And I have done that. I believe in the power of manifestation, stating out loud that you release your pain, your trauma, and really speaking what you want to happen or what you want and what you envision in your future. Because if you say it enough, it's going to happen. Something that I've personally struggled with a lot, and I think this comes back full circle around with that trauma, is I have a really hard time of letting go of control. Whether it's with my kids and my parenting methods, whether it's with how the house is cleaned, whether it's with how I live my life. Just those words, though, can make some people flinch because control gives us the illusion of safety, of order, and knowing what's next. But today, we're going to explore what happens when we loosen our grip a little bit. We stop micromanaging life and we stop demanding certainty. And instead, we begin trusting the flow and just letting it happen, which can be really hard. And if you're anything like me, that does not come easy. It takes a lot of practice. We like control because it makes us feel powerful, predictable, in charge. And in many parts of life, career, family, relationships, we've been taught that control equals success. But here's the truth: control is often a response to fear. Control is often a response to fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of pain, fear of failure, or sometimes just the fear of being human. We try to plan everything to avoid disappointment, right? We set rigid boundaries and rigid expectations so we don't get hurt. But ironically, the more that we try to control a situation, the more life seems to resist it. Because life, the real, raw kind of life, it's not a spreadsheet. It's not entering data on Excel. It's not a perfect plan. It's a dance. It's a slow walk through the woods. So what happens when we don't let go? We burn out. We lose sleep. We damage relationships trying to fix people or outcomes. We become so obsessed as a society of a version of life that we have imagined in our head that we miss out on the life that is actually unfolding in front of us. Because society, social media, whatever, it gives us this picture perfect idea of what life is supposed to be. But that's not reality. To share my own experience, I have a very hard time of letting go of that control when it comes to the way things are done. So for cleaning, for example, I have to have things a certain way. That probably goes to some diagnosis as like OCD or compulsive disorder. But anyways, I have a very hard time. And it backfired on me and brought tension to my marriage when I was asking my husband for help, but then criticizing the way that he does things. That's not going to help me. That's not going to help our relationship. That's not going to help our home be clean. And it wasn't until I surrendered and said, okay, maybe I don't have to have all the control. I don't have to have it done my way. And when I finally did that, I found a little bit of peace. Not immediately, but slowly in those moments. And those moments became freedom for me. The freedom to relax on the couch, the freedom to go get a coffee or run to Target. It wasn't easy, but it made my life and our relationship and our home so much more peaceful. Now, let's get practical. I know that probably wasn't the best example, but that's what I could think of in the moment. Letting go of control doesn't mean you stop caring about something or someone. It doesn't mean that you sit on your hands and let life bulldoze over you. Letting go means you set intentions, but release the outcome. Show up with effort, but detach from perfection. Trust that even if things don't go your way, you'll still be okay. And perhaps most importantly, you become open to being surprised. Letting go is an act of deep trust, not just in the world, but in yourself. Deep trust within who you are, that you can handle what comes your way, that you're not defined by your plans, and that there is wisdom in uncertainty, which, if you think about it, is really weird. Finding wisdom in uncertainty is the opposite of what we've been taught. We plan, we predict, we try to force outcomes. And to be fair, some of that is necessary. Planning gives us structure. Control gives us a sense of safety. But somewhere along the line, we start believing that control equals stability. That if we plan well enough, work hard enough, or check the boxes, we can guarantee the outcomes that we want. And that's where things get a little bit shaky because life does not play by those rules. So if you've ever had a plan fall apart or felt like your whole life plan got flipped upside down, you've seen how little control we really do have. And in all transparency, that's completely terrifying. But here's the shift. That fear can also be an invitation. And we've talked about that. I think I said something about a portal and how it can kind of invite us into becoming a better version of ourselves, not some weird witch portal, but inviting us into becoming a higher, better version of who we were meant to be. The truth is that uncertainty is not the enemy. It's actually a teacher, one that strips away our illusions and invites us to become more present, more real, and more open. Because when we stop clinging to what should be, we start to notice what actually is. Maybe it's the quiet moment between jobs when you finally hear your own voice again. Maybe it's the relationship that didn't work out but left you with clarity about what you truly want in the future. Or maybe it's the risk that you didn't plan for that ended up being life-changing in ways that you could not imagine. That unpredictability and the uncertain space is where creativity, intuition, and resilience lives. It's where growth happens because it forces us to let go of the script and actually listen to our own becoming. Letting go is not giving up. It's not being passive. In fact, surrender might be the bravest thing that you've ever done. And I mean that because it means trusting that you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. It means releasing the pressure to know all the answers right now or ever, because we may not get all the answers. It means creating a safe space for you to have life surprise you. Here's a little truth that I come back to often. Growth does not look like climbing higher. Sometimes it's falling apart and rebuilding with stronger roots or stronger ropes, if you think about it that way. So if you're in a season of unpredictability, I want you to know that you're not lost. You're being invited to that transformation. And speaking of that transformation, what does it mean to transform, to change? Not just on the surface, not just the new job, the new haircut, the new city, but the deep kind of change within yourself, the quiet revolution that happens inside of your soul, the kind of change that others might not see right away, but you feel it and you know it's there. Transformation is identity level change. It's when you stop asking, what should I do differently, and start asking, who am I becoming? Transformation is not just improvement. It's not self-help slogans or checking boxes or posting memes about mental health. It's shedding old stories, unraveling old patterns that kept you small and kept you held back, letting go of versions of you that were built on fear, survival, or what the world told you that you had to be. And here's the most beautiful part about everything. Transformation is not a destination. It's becoming who you were meant to be. It's supposed to be messy. It's supposed to be painful. And it's always worth it. No matter how much pain you have to go through, going through the transformation to become a better, higher version of who you were meant to be is always going to be worth the pain and the struggling. Because let's be honest, most transformation does not start with peace. Mine did not. Mine started with pain. It started the moment that I realized I can't keep living this way. Maybe it's burnout. Maybe it's a breakup. Maybe it's waking up one day and feeling completely disconnected from your own life. Whatever it is, that pain, think of it as an invitation rather than a negative. Because the more that we think negatively about ourselves, about people in our lives, about the way our lives are, the city that we live in, whatever it may be, that's all dragging us down. That's diminishing our purpose, diminishing what we could be. Maybe it's a whisper that says there's something more for you, but first you have to go within. And that's where it begins. Not by fixing yourself because you're not broken. Instead, meeting yourself where you are, even the parts you avoid. Inner transformation looks different for everyone, but here are a few signs that you may be onto it, maybe with even out realizing that you're transforming. You're questioning your old beliefs. You're questioning your old values. You're no longer feeling aligned with things that you used to chase. You crave deeper connections with others, with yourself. You are feeling uncomfortable, uncertain, or somehow more alive, which is really opposite. But once you start sitting in that discomfort and once you start feeling that unpredictability of what's to come, it can actually make you feel better. It lifts that weight off of your shoulders. You might start setting boundaries for the first time ever, which I did. And it actually took me a really long time to set those boundaries with family who does not deserve to be in my life. Or maybe you're finally forgiving yourself, learning how to be still instead of always doing something, which is very hard for me to do. But this transformation, it's subtle, but it's also very radical because it means that you're choosing yourself, not the version shaped by others, not what you see on social media about yourself, not what you hear behind your back about how people talk about you, but the one that's always been quietly waiting underneath. And that's the thing, is we all have the ability to transform. We all have the ability to grow. Some of us just want to do it faster. Some of us may not be ready, but we all have the ability to become a better version of who we are and who we were meant to be. 3 small but powerful practices are reflecting, taking the time to reflect and asking yourself, what part of me is growing? What am I letting go of? Having compassion for yourself. You're not going to get it perfectly. You're going to revert to old patterns. That's okay. Growth is not linear. It's layered and it takes grace. Sitting in the stillness, and this is something that's really hard for a lot of people to do. Sometimes transformation doesn't need more doing, it needs stillness, listening, allowing your body to just rest, listening to what your body needs. We don't force a butterfly out of its cocoon. You wait and you trust the process. That's kind of the same with transforming in ourselves. We cannot force ourselves to change quickly. Growth takes time. And when we think about it, growth comes with a lot of sacrifices. What happens when we grow, but the people in our lives don't like how you've changed? Maybe you've grown, maybe you've set boundaries, maybe you've stopped shrinking yourself to please others. And instead of cheering you on, the people in your life, some people, not all people, but some people are distant or critical or flat out rejecting the version of you who you've become. This can be a really hard thing to accept. Not everyone is going to like how you grow or when you grow. Not everybody is going to be happy when you make changes. Why? Because your change challenges the system that they are comfortable in. If you used to say yes to everything and now you say no, if you used to play small and now you're showing up fully, if you used to agree just to keep the peace and now you speak up, that's going to disrupt their dynamic and the comfortable lies that they live in. And when I say comfortable lies, I mean because when you start to speak up about things that you don't agree with, they see it as a disruption to that comfort of what they think is true. But that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something different, and difference always invites discomfort. That's something that's really hard to accept. Difference always invites discomfort because we are comfortable in our lives, and a lot of the time we get comfortable and we don't want to change because we're scared of that unpredictability. I remember a time when I started going to therapy, setting boundaries, being more honest, saying no to things that I used to tolerate. I thought people around me would be actually proud of that. And even talking about my family issues and my family trauma on this podcast, I thought that it would maybe resolve some conflict that has been long-standing in my family. But a lot of them were not happy and they were not proud of it. And for a while, I questioned that and it stung. It was painful. I questioned myself. I wondered if growing was selfish, but I realized this. They missed the version of me that made them more comfortable, not the version of me that made me healthier. And that was a really big turning point for me. People in our lives like comfort. We like comfort. It's a normal human thing. And some people may not be ready to grow. They may just want to keep things the way that they are. So they miss that version of comfort. It disrupts their peace. It disrupts their illusion. And the hard truth that I've had to learn is people don't want to see you heal. Let's talk about it for a second. Healing makes people uncomfortable. Not everyone, but the ones who benefited from your brokenness, your silence, your low self-worth, those people. Some people grew up comfortable around your pain. Your trauma fit their narrative. Your being wounded made them feel needed or superior or in control. So when your growth and your boundaries, your peace, you're walking into your power, all of that disrupts their dynamic. They liked you better when you were surviving, not thriving, when you didn't know your worth, when you didn't call out the gaslighting or the manipulation, because your healing forces them to confront their wounds and, even worse, their own roles in your life. Here's the thing, healing changes your identity, and that can be scary, not just for you, but for those who've only known you as the broken or damaged version. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Think about it for a second. If you're no longer the friend who always is crying over their ex, or the sibling who never speaks up at family dinner, or the coworker who always plays small, who are you now? And more importantly, who are they without that version of you to define themselves by? That shift in identity creates emotional distance, not out of hate, sometimes out of fear. They may not even realize that they're doing it. Sometimes they may, but sometimes they won't. But you, because you've grown, start noticing. The energy changes, the support turns quiet, the vibes get kind of awkward and weird. And that hurts because you thought that they would be happy for you or that you can resolve conflict by speaking up, like in my own experience. The truth is that it hurts when people don't like how we've changed because deep down we all crave that connection, that belonging, that approval, especially from people who knew the old us and have the opportunity to see the new version of ourselves. But here's what we forget. Some people were only compatible with your wounds, not your healing, not your wholeness, not your boundaries. And as painful as that realization is, it's also very clarifying. It makes room for the people who see you now, not before, and the people who choose to stay in your life, not the ones that walk away. Growth is not a personal attack. Your peace is not betrayal. Your healing is not arrogance. It's survival. You keep going, you keep healing, you stop apologizing for getting better, because not everyone can come with you on that journey, and not everyone wants to. That's okay. Let them go with love, wish them peace, even if they never gave it to you, because the ones who really love you, they will celebrate your healing with you. They will honor your transformation. They will respect your boundaries, and they will root for your freedom, not your suffering. I think the thing that we forget so often is that you don't need to rush things. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. Transformation doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like quiet, like waking up and deciding to keep showing up even when it's hard or you don't want to get out of bed. You're allowed to grow slow. Change and transformation often is slow. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to evolve again and again, because becoming yourself and becoming the version of who you want to be is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong journey. A couple things that I've learned in my own healing journey is not everyone is meant to come with us. And I just briefly said that. Some relationships are seasonal. There's a reason for a season and a season for a reason, right? That doesn't make them failures. It makes them chapters. And chapters come to an end. And for me, that was a really hard thing for me to accept, because when we do have that idea of how our lives should look, it's hard to close that chapter. But you don't owe anyone an apology for becoming healthier and becoming a better version of who you are. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow old versions of yourself that were based on survival or trauma or just getting through the day to day. You're allowed to find your aligned people. There are people out there who will celebrate this version of who you are, who want to see your growth, who are growing as well and maybe want to grow alongside you. People who share in the same interests and morals and values, and people who genuinely want to see you happy. You can have empathy for people who are struggling to adjust, who may not be those people that I just described, but don't shrink to fit back into an old mold just to make others feel comfortable. There are people out there, like I said, who are going to want to see you thrive. And you're also allowed to miss the people who had to step out of your life or you had to remove from your life, because you can be grateful for who they were in the moment and what they taught you, and then turn around and choose yourself now in the present moment. So after this entire conversation that we've had today, what does it mean to become the highest version of yourself? And maybe more importantly, how do you actually do it? Whether you're already on the path or feeling a little lost in the fog of who am I becoming, this end part of the episode is your compass. Becoming the highest version of yourself doesn't mean being perfect. I say that a lot, and I mean it, because I think that society emphasizes perfection, or at least the version of perfection that involves not sharing your trauma or sharing your growth journey, because it can be messy and people don't like messy. Your highest version of yourself is actually the most aligned, authentic, and healed version of you. It's who you are when the fear isn't making the decisions. It's who you are when you are not performing, pleasing, or proving something. It's the you that's deeply connected to your values, your truth, and your purpose. And the good news, that version of you is not far away. They're already within you, waiting to be uncovered, not invented, which I feel is not something that we talk about a lot. We all have the capability to become the highest version of ourselves. Sometimes people just don't have the will or the power to do it. Some people just don't know how to do it, but we all have the opportunity and the chance to become the highest version of who we were meant to be. There actually was a season in my life where I was chasing success that didn't even belong to me. I was checking all my boxes, achievement, validation, happiness, everything. But I felt really disconnected from myself and from what really mattered. One day I had to ask, if I stripped everything away, the titles, the expectations, the need to impress, or the need to fit in, who would I be? And that was really the beginning of my shift when I started really looking at who I was meant to be, not who I thought I should be. Because my thinking of who I should be was based on everybody else's expectations and society's expectations and what I created as a result of feeling the need to be validated and accepted within my own life by other people. So what I learned in that moment is you don't become your highest self by adding more. You become your highest self by letting go of what you're not. We already have what it takes. We already are who we are becoming. Now it's time to remember that and live by that. You don't need a full rebrand. You don't need to wait until you have it all figured out. You just need to commit and live in alignment with integrity and deep self-respect, realizing that you don't need other people's validation or you don't need their version of who you should be. You just need to sit with who you are and who you're becoming. We were never meant to stay the same. We were meant to evolve. Let's talk about why that evolution matters. But first, I want to acknowledge a really quick truth. Staying the same feels safe. No big risks, no growing pains, no confrontation, no unknowns. But here's what we often forget. Staying the same is not neutral. It comes with a cost. The cost of missed purpose, the cost of staying in relationships that drain you, the cost of silencing your voice, your gifts, your dreams, the cost of waking up 5 years from now still wondering, what if I had tried that? What if I took the risk? And that quiet ache, the low hum of this isn't it, that's not your life being broken. That's your higher self trying to get your attention. Remember when I talked about that invitation? Your higher self is trying to get your attention, to invite yourself in to becoming a higher version of you. You becoming a higher version of you isn't just about you. It's about your kids, your community, the energy you bring into rooms, the stories you tell, the experience you have, the people that you inspire, even if you don't realize it. Think about it for a second, you guys. When you heal, you break generational cycles. When you set boundaries, you teach others that it's okay to value themselves. When you pursue your purpose, you give permission to others to stop settling. The world doesn't need more people just going through the motions every day. It needs people who are alive inside, who are sharing their stories, making a difference, and by becoming that higher version of you, that's how you light that fire. The truth is that we spend a lot of time ignoring that inner voice that's talking to us. We spend a lot of energy ignoring it, or even doubting that we are worthy of becoming that person. But you don't need to find the version of you. You already know them. They're just waiting to be brought to the surface. That higher version of you, that's the one that's inside that shows up in your quiet moments. The voice that tells you that you can do more. The feeling that says this relationship isn't okay. Or I'm meant for more. That's not a fantasy. That's your inner knowing. That's your inner voice. And we all have an inner compass. And it's trying to lead us in that right direction. And the longer that we avoid becoming the best versions of ourselves, the more restless that we will feel. Becoming that higher version of yourself will cost you your comfort zone, like I've said. But it will also return you your power, your peace, and your purpose. It's not about becoming that someone better. It's about becoming someone truer, someone who speaks with that clarity and honors their needs, someone who doesn't betray themselves just to belong or be validated. And outgrowing those people, disappointing people, having days where you want to give up, that's all going to happen. But the freedom and the confidence and the joy that comes with living in alignment with who we are meant to be, that is everything, and it's so worth it. I have a question for you. If you fully stepped into the highest version of who you are meant to be, what would change? How you talk to yourself, what you allow in your life, what you chase or what you stop chasing, whatever just came to mind now, follow that. Because becoming the higher version of who you were meant to be is not just a goal, but it's your responsibility to your soul, to your peace, and to your future. We were meant to evolve, and we were meant to change. And again, change is very uncomfortable. Change is not something that we want to just throw ourselves into because we don't know the outcome. We don't have the predictability. But you don't need permission to become the version of you that's been calling you forward. You just need the courage. And I believe in yours because I also believed in mine and it changed my life. I just want to say, if you are in the thick of this, losing people because you're finding who you are, it's worth it. I get it. It's painful, but it's worth it. Keep choosing you. Keep doing the inner work. Keep healing, even if it means walking alone for a while. The right people will find you on the other side. And having mentioned that walking alone is not a weakness, it's resilience, because it takes a certain kind of strength to choose solitude over fake connections. To walk away from the crowd when the crowd no longer aligns with your soul, that's not sadness, it's self-awareness, because we stop chasing that validation. We stop begging for a seat at a table that drains us, and we stop explaining our worth to people who were never meant to understand or who were never trying to understand. You don't walk alone because you have to. You walk alone because you refuse to settle. And fun fact, I hated being alone for a really long time. But one thing I learned is that when I'm alone, I learn things most people never will about myself, my triggers, my patterns, and my dreams. Aloneness is where transformation happens. It's where you stop performing, when you start facing the unhealed parts of who you are, when you meet the real you. And that version of you, the one built in silence, they're grounded, they're unshakable, because their strength does not come from applause. It comes from a grit of survival and peace of knowing who they are. What you build alone, no one can take from you. The self-worth that you found, that wasn't handed to you. You fought for it in the dark. The boundaries you set, they came from heartbreak, learning the hard way that you can no longer tolerate certain things or certain people. And the vision that you're chasing, that came from quiet nights, from feeling misunderstood, from knowing that you were meant for more, even if no one else saw it yet. So yeah, people may not get it. They may call you distant or difficult, drama, or even arrogant, but they have no idea what it took to become this version of you. Again, not everyone wants growth. Not everyone can sit in silence. Not everyone wants to hear the truth. So when you walk alone, you're not behind, you're actually ahead. You're not lost, you're leading. And when the right people do show up, you will know, because they won't ask you to shrink or revert back to old versions of yourself. They'll match your energy, your peace, and your depth. Until then, keep on walking. If you're walking alone right now, I want you to hear me. You are not broken. You are powerful. It means you're doing the inner work. It means you're building a life that's real, not performance. It means you're walking with purpose, not popularity. So stand tall in your solitude. The quiet strength that you carry, that is your superpower. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, share it with your friends. You can find me on Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Spotify, RSS, and many more places. Go check me out on YouTube and share. I have more coming, and there's lots more topics that are coming up soon that you guys will enjoy. So I will see you later.